Because of the number of siblings in our family, a few years ago we started celebrating Thanksgiving on Wednesday nights. That way, on Thursday, all of the in-laws of my siblings can be taken care of, because otherwise it was so difficult all on Thursday on Thanksgiving for everyone to be both at our families and the in-laws for Thanksgiving. And so that gave me the entire Thursday of Thanksgiving pretty much off, besides Mass here in the morning. And I found myself in the afternoon, as I am wont to do, working on a project in the garage over at the rectory. And as I got to a certain point, I was very confident that I would be able to finish the project. I was building a little prayer altar for the rectory out of some scrap wood I had. I realized I didn't have the right screws I needed. And so naturally I thought, I'm not going to just let the screws stop me, so I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to drive to Menards. Well, about halfway there I realized it's Thanksgiving. And I thought, maybe there's a chance they're open. And I looked and they weren't. So that found me on Thursday calling my dad and saying, well, what are you doing tomorrow? Because we can hang out for a while. He said, well, I'm going shopping. I said, it's Black Friday. He said, yeah, I know, but I got to get some salt for the water softener. I said, about all the days of the year, you're going to go buy salt for the water softener on Black Friday. Is it a doorbuster? He said, no, but I need it. I said, well, then I'll drive up to Green Bay there and I'll go to Fleet Farm with you, and I can get my screws there too. So there we are in Fleet Farm. We have this enormous line, and he sends me ahead to do some reconnaissance to see if there's a shorter one, and indeed we find one. But it dawned on me as I'm waiting there in line how much of our life we spend waiting, and so very often time waiting impatiently. The example of me wanting to finish my project and not letting the lack of screws get in my way, I didn't need to finish it that night. I didn't even need to finish it in the next month. But it was sort of like, I want to get this done, and I don't want anything to stand in my way. I started thinking about how Advent is really a period, a time of waiting as we celebrate this first week of Advent. And I noticed more and more, you might have noticed in the culture, but in yourself, our inability to wait for things. Does this sound familiar? Order within the next 2 hours and 32 minutes, and you can have it by Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Amazon, right? You got to order now if you want to get it as soon as possible. They've made an entire enterprise, and they're not just picking on Amazon. Many of them have made an enterprise and signed entire committees to keep people from waiting, keep customers from waiting. Amazon itself has built these enormous distribution centers. If you've ever driven south of Milwaukee on I-43, I-41, 43, you've seen their huge fulfillment center. So they don't have to drive further in order to get people their packages. It's great for the economy, I suppose, but they work 24/7 trying to fulfill orders. As we begin this Advent, I want to propose a question that Pope Benedict had proposed in one of his Advent reflections. And I'm going to quote it here. The question is the humanity of our time still waiting for a Savior? One has the feeling that many consider God as foreign to their own interests. Apparently, they don't need him. They live as though he did not exist, and worse still, as though he were an obstacle to remove in order to fulfill themselves. Even among believers, we're sure of it, some let themselves be attracted by enticing dreams and distracted by misleading doctrines and suggest deceptive shortcuts to happiness. Yet, despite its contradictions, worries, and tragedies, and perhaps precisely because of them, humanity today seeks a path of renewal of salvation. It seeks a Savior and awaits, sometimes unconsciously, the coming of the Savior who renews the world and our life, the coming of Christ, and the one true Redeemer of man and the whole of man. Friends, have our lives become more about waiting for a what than waiting for a who? Have they become more about waiting for something, I don't know, we've ordered or something we want, rather than awaiting in the true Christian hope for the coming of the Savior, his second coming when he will appear in glory? Everybody knows, if you've watched the news for any more than 15 minutes, the nightly or world news, that it's very clear that the world needs a Savior. Not only the world needs a Savior, but every one of us needs a Savior. If we dig down deep into our lives, we know that there are places in our hearts that we need to give to God. Places where we need a personal Savior. Isaiah says it very clearly in our first reading. He says today, our good deeds have become like polluted rags. What does he mean by that? It sounds harsh. But what he means by that is that even our good deeds tend to be filled with compromise, that we do them in order, in a sense, to be seen, or we do them because they make us feel good, or we do them because of a selfish motivation. When you give your life and your heart to the Lord and allow him to be your personal Savior in the things you struggle with, your deeds become done with more joy, and the self-interest begins to wane. Our gospel is very important today because it talks about the gatekeepers in being watchful. It doesn't mean biological sleep. It doesn't mean physical sleep. Stay awake, be alert. It means a spiritual alertness. Advent offers us a time, and it offers me a time, to consider where my focus in life has really been. God rest you, merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. For Christ our Savior is born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power, distractions, dreams that have nothing to do with God. O tidings of comfort and joy. Comfort and joy. The question then is, where do you seek your comfort? At the end of the liturgical year that we ended yesterday, we began a new liturgical year, and I got to tell you, I love Advent. Why? Because for me, it's like starting over. It's like I can do something this year that I've been wanting to do for years, a habit that I've wanted to quit, something good that I've been wanting to do but haven't been able to because of seemingly obstacles in my way, and I can have a source of renewal. But the problem is that I know I keep going to those areas of comfort. I can finish up here on a Sunday and I go back to the rectory and I'm sitting there thinking, well, I should probably pray because I didn't pray very well this morning. I got up too late. But there's also a bag of Doritos in the cupboard. I preached this homily last night and I went back and I'm supposed to be preparing for this talk between Masses, polishing up my homily, and I'm turning on the Badger game and I'm thinking to myself, I could really use something more to eat because it's been like 5 hours since I've eaten. And then I thought, where is my comfort coming from? Football, all these things are fine in themselves. But when I really dig deep down into myself, if that song is right, oh, tidings of comfort and joy that God gives us by coming into our lives, then why do I not invite that in when I'm looking for comfort? When I seek it in things that are not God? Are you really awaiting for a Savior? Do you have a desire for a Savior to come in your life? The first step of that is recognizing that you need one. And we make that invitation today. And that's the end of the homily. Remember that you're the gatekeepers, right? Your souls, your decisions are the gatekeepers of what comes into the world. And so you have an essential play, as small as it might seem, to affect the entire world. And so lastly, I just want to say, during Advent, that we're going to do the chanting for the liturgy too, but my intention is to keep the homily shorter. I can't promise this if Deacon Dave preaches. But my intention is to keep the homilies very short and simple, but have longer periods of silence during the Mass. Why? As soon as you hear silence during the Mass, what do you start thinking? Did we forget something? Why is Father just sitting there? What are we supposed to be doing? We got to do the next thing, right? No. Just sit and enjoy not having to go anywhere or be anywhere or do anything for these moments with God as we worship Him in the liturgy. And allow God to speak in the silence of your hearts.